What I'd like to do is take stock from you guys on any feedback so far, any classes or curriculums or lessons that you guys want to learn, so I can get that stuff on the calendar. Every week we're putting together the agenda, and the agenda from a kind of 30,000 foot view is going to include the morning sessions, a large group session where everyone from all experience and all production is invited to come. Most likely will include a weekly kind of what I would call basic skills camp, right? Which is essentially like putting together an offer, or kind of like the two of you guys were together last week and saw, we talked a little bit about the mindset around approaching people. We talked a little bit about the checklist process when it comes to buyers and sellers. Both of those checklists, by the way, buyer checklist and seller checklist, are in the Google Drive. So if you were not here, or you don't even know what I'm talking about, there is a checklist for both the buyer process and the seller process. It was just mine. I'm not saying it's fully complete, but it's probably a good bit more detailed than most. And that should give you a guide to the things that you should make sure that you are thinking about, right? Everything from how you put their information into the system, when you update it, when you send a handwritten note, when you call the lender, all that kind of stuff. If I remember correctly, if it was in regular font, it was something that I did, and if it was in bold font, it was something that my assistant did. And this was also done a couple years ago prior to command, so it hasn't been updated for the command stuff, like just putting them on a nurture plan or putting them on a smart plan or something of that nature. You should include that too. Plus, on the opportunities section, you can essentially take that checklist and say, okay, home and under contract, what are the 6 things I need to do now, right? So that would be, let's say, change the status in MLS, send the contract to the lender, send the contract to the closing attorney, send the letter of important dates to the clients, call them and congratulate them, send them a movie gift card. Hey, congratulations on going under contract. Here's a ticket for 2 movie theater tickets. I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to be involved in helping you guys. Whatever it is, whatever you do, whatever your standard is. Okay? So what I want to do is basically just hear from you on how things are going thus far. I want to make sure, just some quick housekeeping, that everyone is in all the systems. So I'm just going to write them up here for the moment. We have WhatsApp. We have our private Facebook. We have the Google Drive.
So where do we find the Google Drive? I thought you put it in the WhatsApp, but I don't see it now.
I have sent it out by email to everyone. And if you have not gotten it, I can resend it to you. So WhatsApp, Facebook, Google Drive, Ramp Up, and what's the other one?
YouTube.
YouTube. Thank you. Okay. So if you are not involved in each of these programs, let me know. We'll knock it out one by one. Yes?
Is the Facebook the Roswell Rocks?
No, that is the Market Center's Facebook page. That is not the Facebook page for this group, though. That's called Roswell PC.
Any of the last 4,
All right, we're gonna get together on that then.
okay.
Actually, let's just do it right now. Okay, I'm gonna forward you both an email that'll have all of these.
I have it.
You do have it?
I just found it.
Okay.
Are they all in one email?
Yes.
The most recent one was, yes. So,
When did you send it? Yesterday.
yeah, give me 1 second. Okay. Rach Green at KW, right?
Yes. So that's mine.
Yep. And Alexandria. What is the, Alexandria, or A Brigham at KW? Is that your email?
I have no idea.
Okay, that's perhaps why you haven't gotten them. So check that if you don't mind, I just sent it again anyway. Okay, so if you're not on these, please make sure you're on these. If you do not have a Ramp Up book, or you don't know what I'm talking about, Ramp Up is a 8-week course that you can go through a bunch of modules. There's a workbook here where you will set up a lot of the foundational pieces for your business. You'll learn some planning tools, some scripting, some social media things. This is a great resource, especially if you want to learn this stuff outside of this room. There's a lot of stuff you can, obviously it's all video modules, so you can do it at your own pace. Let's just take a minute and go through what you guys, as new agents, what are your biggest fears, concerns? What are you excited about? What class, like, do you need right away? Tell me everything that's on your mind right now. Just shout them out.
How much time do you have?
We have 55 minutes.
I'm excited to have someone keeping me accountable,
Accountability, okay.
because I am easily distracted like a middle schooler.
All right, what else? Yeah, that's all you guys want to know? My job's easy.
I would like to know how to prioritize and
That's
time
good.
management, how to get stuff just like this.
Got it?
I want to learn how to comfortably navigate like FMLS and, I feel like I'll go to look for something and it says no, but I signed up, I'm taking an FML class at their office.
Thank you.
It's coming
I was
up.
going to suggest that you be resourceful on that.
Yeah. I
And you log on to fmls.com. There are so many videos.
Yeah.
And you watch all of them, and then you'll know more about FMLS than any of us, right?
So, if anyone has questions, I can show you if there's seats left in that group I'm in.
Right. So, and they generally have those classes like pretty much every day. There are tons of them.
Yeah.
So anything like FMLS, even things like Command, quite honestly,
Yeah,
these are things that, let's group these together. And I know you're not gonna like to hear this, and I know where you're coming from because I don't like it either. But we're gonna need you to be a bit resourceful on this. I wanna spend time in the room talking about a little bit more like tactical mindset type things, and you're not paying me to teach you how to run FMLS, right? That's something you can do on your own, at your own leisure. I'm not saying I'm not willing to. I'm just saying I don't think that's the best use of our time together, right? Command, you got several classes every week basically, plus a couple of people in the office that are ready to sit down with you for free for either half-hour blocks or 1-hour blocks to teach you whatever you need to know about Command. Plus, there are an ungodly number of videos.
Bill, who are those people now? Because it used to be.
So, Leanza is gonna be the point person for the next month at least.
Oh, okay.
Leanza? Leanza.
Okay.
She's part of Robin T's team. So either talk to her or Robin T, you can get on the schedule, they'll send you a, what do you call it, like a website thing where you can select the time that you wanna meet with them, okay? So these things, I think I've mentioned this to you guys before. The item that is most closely correlated to your amount of success that you're gonna have is how open-minded and coachable you are and how resourceful you are. I'll give you an example. Tevin, let me pick on you for a second. Let's just assume that you don't know a whole lot about profit share. And that's something you'd like to learn about. What do you do? Let me give you a couple of options. Do you check the Market Center calendar once a month and see if there's a class? Or do you go to the person that you think knows the most about profit share and ask them? Or do you do nothing?
I could reach out to the person who
Remind me, I want to come back to that.
Okay, or KW Connect, I'm sure has
Beautiful.
plenty of stuff on it.
KW Connect, YouTube, Google, they could all tell you about it, right? So if you want to know something, don't just wait around. You'll spend more time surfing, trying to find the old email from Melody from 2 weeks ago to see if it's on the calendar and then realize it's not, then, excuse me, then you will just YouTube, or Googling it, right? And you can find literally anything you want on Google and anything you want on YouTube. I mean, my daughter, she has this, don't ask me where this came from. She has this thing recently where she wants to see like king cobras eat things.
You can find it.
Okay? She's like, I want to see a king cobra eat a python. Takes 2 seconds and we got like 15 videos to choose from. Guys, if you want to know how to find something on FMLS, or you want to know how to set up a smart plan or neighborhood nurture or whatever, just go here. You'll get the answer much faster here than you will posting it on Facebook or asking in our group even, or coming in the next morning and ask it. Just be as resourceful as you possibly can. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, what else?
Habit forming
Okay?
and add-on, I don't know if they're kind of separate or together, but the MREA
Models?
models, yeah. I guess those would, determine your habits in a way.
Okay, wonderful. I'm starting to see a couple of themes that we'll go through. What else?
Can you talk about like, referrals and stuff?
Sure.
Aubrey has a class on that, a CE class next week too.
What day and time is that, please? Let's tell everybody.
My mom was looking to sell her house in Colorado Springs.
Why in the world would you sell a house in Colorado?
She does not, I don't know, she doesn't want it anymore.
All right,
Um,
you can help with that and you can be paid to help with that. We're gonna come back to that. All right, what time is that class?
I think it's the wealth building class.
No, that's a different one.
Oh, no, hold on, just kidding, give me a second.
Which makes me wonder if I planned over all here or not. Oh, you're looking at the calendar, what?
Yes, somebody help me out here.
Yeah, I'm
This-
trying to find it here.
I think it's in my, oh, she's got,
Okay, 1 to 4 on the 27th,
oh, it's 2 weeks.
okay?
That's fine.
All right. What other topics? Let me ask the question a different way. What do we need to do in the next 48 minutes to make you feel like this was worth your time?
I think when I was a new agent, I wanted to know, scripts for door knocking, stuff like that. So one of the scripts is like, hey, I'm not bothering you, I know you're not selling, but, do you know anybody in the neighborhood who is? Like
Yep.
that one, I love that one, I use it all the time, because I feel like I'm not pushy.
Mhm.
But I wanted to know about farming too, I didn't really understand the concept of that when I was a newer agent.
Farming, okay.
And how about, can you do like almost like a role play of, you being a buyer and having an agent, or a seller, and having an agent in an actual listing appointment in front of us?
Yeah, good idea.
Robert used to do that, it was like a super hit in the class.
Yep, perfect. What else? All right, let's talk, if something pops in your mind, throw it out. I'm just gonna start to go through it. I'm gonna try to merge a few of these ideas and spend a few minutes on each one today. Cool? Okay, and then of course we'll go deep with all of these things very soon. Okay, we've already kind of discussed these right here. That's an example of basically a tool like Georgia MLS, MLS, KWLS, Michael Lewis Marketing Suite, all of these tools that, Cole, Vulcan 7, all these things that are great if you know how to use them. And the only way you're going to get better and more fluent in these systems is to learn what they do and learn best practices. And the only way that's gonna happen is if the time to do so appears in your schedule somewhere and you look at your calendar enough and protect those time blocks so that you do it. Anyone disagree with that? Okay, so what I would do, remember how the other day we went through this idea of kind of, let's say this is the timeline of your life, okay? And let's say it's split up into these three segments. This we'll say is around 21 years old, and this we'll say is around 65 years old. So conventional America, I'm gonna make some generalizations here. Conventional America would say that this is your learning time, right? So when you're going to elementary school, high school, middle school, college, etc. This is your working time, and this is your play time, right? Retirement. Does everyone follow that? Here's the problem with this life, okay? Here you don't get to learn or play, and hope to God that you're healthy enough and have enough money to enjoy the time that you have, or to enjoy all the things that you want to do in the time that you've waited to do it. Does anyone, without bringing up any painful stories, does anyone know anyone that didn't make it to this? Right? I have a friend, not such a close friend, but somebody I've known for a long time. Her father died the week he was supposed to retire. I know of another guy who retired on a Friday and died the following Monday. He didn't give a freaking day. Does that make sense? So, what I suggested is there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if these are the days of the week, right? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? So what we said is maybe you have, this is your learn, play, that's on a Sunday. Here is learn and play, that's a Saturday. And here is learn, earn, and play. And that's the same thing during the week. So every day you're doing some of each, right? And the only way that's gonna happen is if you are super stingy about your time. The only way that's gonna happen is if you have a reason to be. Now the reason to be is the fact that you've got goals, right? Other people are depending on you, right? Other people are watching you, right? Other people are gonna have a better life if you get to where you want to be, right? If you spend all of your time working and you neglect your health, or you neglect the people that care the most about you, you may not make it over here, right? And if you play too much here, you may not have enough money, right? If you sit in class all day with me but don't go actually talking to anybody, you're not gonna make any money. And therefore you're not gonna afford to be able to play either, right? So it's all about this balance, okay? So, if we're gonna do learning basically every day, the question is what are we gonna learn, right? So I do think that it's advisable to learn something with respect to what you actually spend the most time doing, right? Heather, were you in the class yesterday with the Powerful Questions class? Did you find it interesting, who else was in that class? Did you find it interesting that they said, okay, so you spend 8 hours, let's just say 8 hours a day working, and you spend 16 hours a day either sleeping or being with your family, right? How many classes, have you been to a class in the last month on building your business? Everyone raises their hand. Tell them to call you back, man. No real estate emergencies. Come on in, turn that thing off. It's only stressing you out because you're letting it stress you out.
It's not stressing me out.
You getting paid?
Well, I was making sure I got a new number so I could work in this area with.
All right. If they ask you, well, how many classes have you attended in the last month about parenting? or a class on marriage and, you know, being a better husband or better spouse. And I raised my hand because I have been, but there's very few people that raise their hand.
Yeah.
Right, did you find that
I did.
pretty eye-opening?
But honestly, until maybe the last 5 or 6 months ago, I wouldn't have raised my hand, right? Like, because I hadn't taken the measures to be a better wife or a step-parent or parent until the last, 6 months.
Well, I applaud you for that. And I'm just gonna go out on a limb and make an assumption here. You tell me if I'm crazy. You have been getting coaching in your real estate business for a while, and you probably saw that it was helping. And so you said, I wonder if this coaching thing would help in other parts of my life.
And one of the other things that I picked up from my coaching in my career was when they talk about like your gym, which I go to the gym, but they talk about your spirituality. So I'm not exactly religious, I don't fall under like Catholicism or anything else, but then I found a spiritual advisor. So I did that too, because it was something I was like, okay, I'm missing a link, right? So let me find the link that I'll fit most into. And so
Love that.
I have her too. She's not even in the state, we Skype once a week.
And you pay her probably.
I sure do. It's like
Good for you.
$200 a session.
Good for you. Is it worth it?
Yes, absolutely.
Good
It's
for you.
changed so many things.
You can't put a price on how better of a wife you're being, or better of a step-parent you're being, or better of a community member you're being, or whatever else they're helping you with, right? So my point is that if every day you're gonna learn, what are you gonna learn? Are you gonna learn about something, how to be a better presenter? Are you gonna learn about how to speak better, ask better questions, learn more about the marketplace, learn more about the technology, learn more about kind of how the world is changing? If some of you guys have, heard, there's all kinds of books out there now on how technology's changing everything, right? I mean, there's some crazy stuff they're doing with technology now. You know that with 5G, they're gonna be able to have a surgeon in, let's say, New York, and a soldier comes in off the battlefield who just got his leg blown off. And they go into a hospital room in Afghanistan, let's say, and the surgeon is in New York operating on the guy.
What?
They have,
It's robotics.
they're talking
Yes.
about printing, 3D printing organs. Israel just did this thing a week or so ago where they took out a guy's lung, cleaned it all up, removed all the cancerous tumors and all that, put it back in the dude's body. Like, the world is changing, guys. You need to learn about how it's gonna impact your business.
Can I add to that
Yeah.
really quick? One of the other things that I did in personal development is I read the book 7 Levels of Communication.
Yep.
Which is such a fantastic book, I recommend it to everyone.
Michael Mayer.
One of the things he says though is to go into like your Google, like whatever, your Gmail or whatever, and set up Google alerts. And so if you're not really good at like reading the news, which I'm not, and we don't have cable, so I don't watch the news, but I get these alerts sent to my phone. You can pick out the topics that you wanna like, but it's also good conversational pieces because not only are you staying up with current events, but then you can have these conversations with other people. So it benefits you too. That's something I think is useful.
Right. So if you work, let's say, in the Alpharetta area a lot, and you want to see when Alpharetta's mentioned in the news, I think that's a great way to do it. So earmark some time every single day to learn something, and these are some examples of things you might want to learn. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. Let's knock out referrals real fast. Referrals. Hey. Okay, we have licenses in the state of Georgia. Does anyone else have a license anywhere else? Charleston, I know you're in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
Lana, you're in Florida, right? Who else? Anyone? Okay. Let's say, for example, this is Roswell, and this is Metro Atlanta, and this is Snellville. Okay? I've lived here almost my entire life, born and raised. I've lived in 6 years of my life, I've lived outside of Atlanta. Every other part of my life, I've lived in Atlanta. I will admit, I've never been to Snellville one time. Okay? Not saying there's anything good or bad about Snellville, I'm just telling you I haven't been there. And I know absolutely nothing about real estate in Snellville, and I'm not gonna pretend to. And so if you remember from real estate school, we have an ethical obligation to work with clients when we feel we are the most appropriate resource to help guide them through that transaction, right? So, I'm in Roswell, right? I get an opportunity to list a home in Snellville. Do I go? Yes or no? Got a couple questions. Number one is it I would equate that to, there's two discussions here. One is it's a business discussion and one is an ethical discussion. Now, when I was a brand new agent, I didn't have any transactions, I would have driven to China to get a transaction, right? Certainly Snellville. And I would have pretended like I could do it, no question. However, as I got more and more experienced and I got busier and busier, my circle kept shrinking of the areas that I would travel to, right? So that's and I would encourage you, by the way, if you're gonna chase down a lead in Snellville right now, and you don't know anything about Snellville, all the time it takes you to go over there every single time, learn the market, meet your client, show them all the homes, do all the paperwork, all that kind of stuff. If you did none of that and instead just referred it to an agent in Snellville and took 25% of the transaction, and then spent all that time trying to find a lead here, you'd probably be better off. Almost certainly would you be better off. By the way, you'd also have somebody that they think that all this area is outside of their area, and now maybe this agent will start sending you business.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's another reason to go out of your area to take classes. One of the times I did Bold, I did it past the airport, right? Why? So I could meet more people. Because those people don't want to come up to the north suburbs to sell homes. So I was the recipient of a number of referrals. And I didn't want to go south to sell homes. So it was a nice win-win for everybody. Does that make sense? So can you honestly be an ethical, if you're going to look at it from an ethical standpoint, can you do it? Or should you do it? From a business standpoint, you would say, yes, I'm licensed to do it. Is it the most appropriate use of my time? Right? Then you would say, now my mother wants to sell a house in Colorado. Well, I ain't got a license in Colorado, nor do I know the market, and even if I did, I couldn't sell it because I don't have a license there. So we can refer business to anyone that we want at any time, okay? So for example, Alexandria, you could call the Colorado Springs Keller Williams office. Again, it doesn't have to be Keller Williams, but I would choose Keller Williams if I could because I know that they have the right culture, the right mindset, that they've been trained properly, that they believe in that stuff, right? And no offense, but this is what I would say. I'd call up and whoever answered the phone, I'd say, hey, this is Bill from Roswell, Georgia, and I'd like to have a potential seller referral, and I want to speak to somebody that's a Bold graduate and on the ALC, right?
Can I ask you something?
Mm-hmm.
Is it better to reach out by a call, or is it just as good by email?
I think it's better on the phone.
Okay.
Yeah, because the first call you're probably going to get, you're going to the middleman basically, right? So let's say you would go to Melody. Melody answers the phone. Melody, I'm Bill from Roswell, Georgia. I want somebody who works with a lot of sellers. I want somebody who is paid for training, right? In other words, takes their business seriously, right? And I want somebody who's a leader in the office, top 20%, those people, right? And that, go ahead.
I only asked because when I did that, I stumbled across and Connect. There's a referral
Yeah.
page and everybody's stuff. It was pretty good.
That's what I
The
used
way
to.
I used it. I mean, it was pretty okay.
I'm not saying the way you have to do it. Me personally, I wanted to hear the person's voice.
I
Okay,
did talk to them
understand.
though.
Yeah.
I interviewed 3 of them.
Yeah,
You ended up
that's good.
talking and stuff.
Right.
Also, if you're in the state, like I was in Oakland, California in October, and I brought my best friend and her husband to a Keller Williams office.
Okay.
And then I sat down with another agent and spoke to them and made that introduction.
Yeah.
We did the referral behind the scenes, but I was able to introduce them to
Yeah.
someone. So if you're in the state and you have the person, bring them to an office. Yeah.
That's
Keller Williams is
that's
Keller
more than I would
Williams.
probably be willing to do, by the way.
Well, I was there on vacation and,
Good for you.
Like, I was like, let's do it. You guys wanna look at houses? Let's go.
every process it's your process to create. I'm just giving you some background on what I've done in the past. No offense, but I didn't want the person on desk duty.
Right.
I wanted somebody who had sold homes before, that had a reputation in the office as a giver, that had a production level that was above average, and somebody who had a good reputation, right? Then I'd get on the phone with that person, I'd say, hey, these are my expectations of you. Are you the right person, right? And everything's negotiable, but generally speaking, you end up getting around 25% of the gross commission, okay? So that holds true out of state, and that also holds true in areas that you are not proficient. So, for example, if I got a lead right now and somebody wanted to buy a home in Macon, I've only been to Macon once, and it's too damn far away for me to go down there and work with buyers and sellers. So that's a X on the business, and it's also an X ethically, because I don't know anything about Macon, right? So I'm gonna call an agent down there, and I'm gonna get somebody else to work the deal. And I'm gonna receive 25%, and all the money and time I saved, not working that deal, I can plow into a new deal locally, yes.
You said gross, so the gross is the,
Gross is the top line, so a $300,000 sale, most likely the gross would be $9,000.
okay. No.
Yep, so they would pay 25% of that off the top, right? So that is, what would that be? That's $1,500, that's $7,500? No, that's not right. That's 45, 2250, 6850, and then that's split according to however they split commissions.
Okay, so you got, okay,
Make sense?
yeah.
It's just like you pay me, it comes off the top. Okay, that's referrals. You can also be the recipient of referrals. How do you become the recipient of referrals? First of all, you show up, right? And you prove to your peers and the leadership and the ALC and the staff and everyone that you take your business seriously, right? As a former team leader, I was getting those calls, right? And they'd say, who do I give or who should I pass this lead along to? If somebody never came into the office and never came to class and didn't exhibit high level of culture, they didn't get those opportunities. Make sense? So always be setting yourself up to have the highest reputation possible so you can get matched up with those opportunities. Make sense? Okay, let's talk about scripts for a second. Scripts. If you go into the Google Drive, there are tons of scripts. There are the Ignite scripts, and I think I also dropped in another like 200-page folder of scripts. So please comb through those and see if there's anything that you like. They're everything from cold leads, sphere of influence, open houses, follow-ups, Mets, not Mets. I mean, there's door knocking, there's pretty much everything.
Where is this?
That's on the Google Drive.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm constantly adding things every day to there, okay? So, try to keep it simple though, right? If you Google expired scripts, like you will literally find thousands. Just pick a couple that you like and work them.
Can I give a plug to Tom Ferry too?
Yeah, Tom Ferry is a good
He's so
resource.
good, and he's on YouTube, and you
Mhm.
can find a script for anything from him.
Right,
With
and a lot of them are
Tom
free.
Ferry. And his brother too is like Mike Ferry.
Mike Ferry and Mike, Tom, and there's one other one, I
Oh, is
think.
there another
One of them's the dad, and then he's got two sons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of the bold scripts are very similar to Mike Ferry's, or Tom Ferry's.
If you like forget a script, you can pull it up and listen to it in your car. Sometimes I listen to the open house one before I hold an open house, so he's really good.
There's also another website, I think it's called kevinnow.com. It's a guy named Kevin Ward. I really like him. He's got a bunch of free resources on his website too. There's no there's no magic script, right? It's, if you say the script enough, you're gonna get so much business you don't know what to do with it. If you don't say the script enough, you ain't gonna get any business. Okay? So I'm not saying there's not quality in the scripts, you just gotta say them. The quality is in the quantity. Okay? And it's in practicing. just a quick sidebar on scripts, they're written for a reason. So, for example, in the bold listing presentation, it says something to the effect of, so Tevin, one of three things is gonna happen tonight during our course of our presentation. One is you're gonna agree to work with me. Two is you're gonna agree that you don't wanna work with me. And three is I'll determine if I wanna work with you. And a casual observer might say, why would you ever say that? Right? Well, are you gonna work with every single person you speak with that might wanna work with you?
No,
Why?
it might not be a fit for what I'm.
What does that mean?
Might be too difficult to work with.
Might
That's
not
good.
align with my values.
That's another one, right? Let's say they're a bigot or they,
They
I
want,
don't know, they cuss or something like that, and you don't like people like that?
they want
Yes.
to pay you less.
That's another one. Or they have unrealistic expectations. They want you to spend, a lot of money on newspaper ads or something, right? Or maybe they won't price the home correctly, right? Or they expect too much of you. I want an update every day. I want you to do an open house 3 times a week. When we know that's not gonna help sell the house, right? So that's why you say it. You also say it because psychologically, it has an impact on the listener, right? So they would say, you mean there's a chance that this guy doesn't wanna work with me? Right? But it kind of reverses the kind of authority structure, if you will, for a second. Just changes the way they think, right? When you show up at the door, you say, hey, Tevin, it's 4 o'clock, we had a 4 o'clock appointment. Could I come in? Right? Why did you have to tell them it's 4 o'clock? They probably know it's 4 o'clock. They've been waiting for you, right? Because you said you're gonna be there at 4 o'clock. You're reminding them you're on time. Right? That works with IDs, right? But the presentation has elements of working for all of the different personality profiles, right? And therefore, the more and more you get to know about these personality profiles, the more and more you can identify certain things and then use it to your advantage. Here's another example. Let's say, for example, you walk through the home and you go into the closet and they have the white shirts, and then they have the off-white shirts, and then they have the light gray shirts and the darker gray shirts and the light blue shirts and then the slightly darker light blue shirts, and everything is perfectly organized. Shoes are all in a line, great. Guess what? You better have some stats. That's how they think, right? If you don't have stats, they don't trust you. You have stats, they'll do anything for you because you're alike. That makes sense? If they've got a bunch of certificates and whatnot on their wall, okay, this is where I went to high school, this is where I went to college, this is my hole-in-one, this is the deer I killed last week, right? This is the blah, 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 blah. Guess what? They want to talk about it. It's on the wall for a reason, right? So say something. If you don't say anything, you lost an opportunity to build rapport. Does that make sense? If you say something, you have instant rapport, right? We talked a little bit earlier, some of the skills I learned in networking is when you get in a networking environment, the goal is to figure out how fast can I find something that I have in common with this person, right? That's my only goal. So let's say we're in some type of a cocktail party or something like that. If I want to build a relationship with you, the faster I can find something that the two of us have in common, the better off we're going to be. Make sense? Okay, so scripts. Don't leave anything out. Just say it the way it's supposed to be said. Okay? I know it might sound awkward at first. There's another script that they used to do in bold. I think they still do it actually. Like, I don't want you to work with a weak agent. At a weak time, I don't want you to select a weak agent. You remember that line? When I first read that 8 or 9 years ago, I was like, there ain't no way I'm saying that. Well, guess what? Guys, the average real estate agent in Atlanta sells about 3 homes a year. I'm not suggesting that's a lot or a little. I'm just suggesting I feel like it's safe to say that all of us want to sell more homes than that, right? Is there anyone that has a goal to sell less than 3 homes this year? That's what I thought. So there is a very high chance, right? Oh, and by the way, about 70% of consumers will select the only real estate agent that they work with or meet with, right? So what are the odds that a regular old consumer is gonna get matched up with a below average real estate agent?
On that note, I think maybe something to add to the list, talk to them about, like, I know when I was a first year agent, I struggled so much with a value proposition,
Mhm.
because I didn't know what my value was, and, you know, Mama Melba preaches it, like, what's your value proposition, and everybody talks about it, but I feel like you don't really get that until you're out in the field and you're doing it. So now I know what it is, but
Mhm.
I remember being very lost in that when I was in their position too.
Do you feel comfortable sharing what your value is now?
I mean, I haven't done like an elevator pitch, I haven't like written it down, but I know that I work hand in hand with my clients, I give them weekly updates, I'm very responsive to them. You know, if they need to talk to me and I'm like in the middle of something, I reach out and I say, hey, I need about an hour or 15 minutes. I'm gonna get their home on the market, I'm gonna get it sold in the quickest amount of time for the fastest amount of money, that's another script. And my marketing too, like how I market their stuff.
How do you market their stuff?
So, one of my favorite lines to tell people, and they get like all enamored with it, I always go in there saying, hey, I'm gonna do your photo package, and this is gonna be money that I'm not asking back for you guys, I'm gonna take care of that, I'll incur the expense. The other thing I'm gonna do is, when I market your home, you know, do you wanna sign in the line, yes, no, whatever, okay, we'll figure that out. But also, I talk to them about GMLS versus FMLS. So I sold a woman's home, she was with her agent, an average agent, for 6 months. She had 1 open house and maybe 2 visitors. I said to her, how quick are you ready to sell this house? I'm gonna sell your house. I put it live on a Friday, I hosted an open house. I didn't do any showings on Saturday. I hosted an open house on Sunday, we were in contract that night. One of the things that and I got a referral from her, and I spoke to her friend as well, and I'm listing that woman's house at the end of this month. One of the things I said to her was, hey, listen, agents don't wanna incur a lot of expenses. GMLS is free, but us realtors, we use FMLS, and we're gonna have to pay for that, and that's an out-of-pocket expense, and I'll incur that for you. That will get you maximum exposure. And they like eat that up. They think, oh my God, now she's spending like $500 extra on me and she doesn't want it back.
Well, the fact of the matter is you are, but everyone is. But I hear what you're saying.
Right, but they don't know that.
Of course not.
They don't know that I'm being different from someone else because they're only interviewing me.
Right, and let's say she interviews me right afterwards, and I feel that that's just what real estate agents do, so I don't bring it up. At the end of those 2 meetings, the seller says, oh my gosh, this woman Heather, she's gonna spend a little a little bit more of her money to make sure my house sells, and even though I'm gonna do the same thing, she doesn't know that, right? So sometimes your differentiation is just sharing with them something that you really feel strongly about, right? I'm gonna have drone photography, or I'm gonna, I'm gonna do, what's it called? Retargeting on social media or something like that.
Oh, I do that too. I do Facebook ads. That's the other thing I tell them.
Mhm.
You know, I'll go in there, I'll list your open house, I will Facebook ad it, I will post your home for sale, I will do a Facebook and an Instagram ad for that. I explain to them the importance of social media and
Mhm.
how, you know, most consumers are on social media, stuff like that, yeah. Door knocking.
Good job.
You know, well, I don't really like to door knock, but if I have someone hold my open house, I ask them to do it.
There you go. Presentations, that falls back on the, a little bit on this, right, and the scripting, and of course, the time management. When am I gonna practice my presentations? So like, I practice my presentations for 20 minutes a day, something like that. So that, at the heart of what we do, that is the heart of what we do. That is going on appointments. What do you do when you go on appointments? You present, right? So how do you explain the buyer brokerage agreement? How do you explain the listing agreement? How do you set them up for the appropriate expectations of the buying process or the seller's process? What is the Heather Hare version of a buyer presentation or a seller presentation? That's what we do. That's equivalent to taking batting practice, right? That's equivalent from taking infield practice, right? You're a second baseman, what do you get paid to do? You get paid to field the ball and throw it to first base. So you better practice that over and over. The other part of what you get paid to do is you hit the ball. So that's why you practice that every day, right? I know it's a little cheesy and corny to say, but we're kind of like athletes also, right? We have to practice what we do the most of, or what, let me rephrase that. You have to practice not necessarily what we do the most of, but what has the best likelihood of yielding what we want, which is appointments and closings, right? So you're gonna practice your scripts and lead gen, you're gonna practice your role play, you're gonna practice your objection handling, all of that. You don't practice checking Facebook because that doesn't yield much. Make sense? Okay, let's talk a little bit about let's talk about farming for just a moment, and then basically everything else kind of fits into an idea I have. Farming, there's kind of two types of farming. One is geographic farming, and the other is really, you could do like online geographic farming, right? So a farm would be, let's say you live in Willow Springs, okay? Willow Springs is a neighborhood in Roswell, Country Club of Roswell, same thing, right? And there are all these streets in that neighborhood, right? And they've got all these little houses here. And you know that the more signs you have in this neighborhood, the more you will be considered the community expert, and the more of a likelihood you'll be or have to get a call that says, "Hey Tevin, I see your signs everywhere, come and list my home." Right? We did a little research project, my assistant and I, about 2 or 3 years ago, and we researched, we probably collected close to 1,000 neighborhoods in North Metro Atlanta, and like literally, I think there were 6 of them that had what I would call a dominant agent. A dominant agent was 25% of the market share or more, which should tell you basically every neighborhood is open. Okay? Now, this is, you need to have a marketing and prospecting plan specifically for that neighborhood, that if you want to take market share in it. So that could be anything from Facebook targeting, which would be the online version, mailers, door knocking, hosting open houses, having some type of community event. You know, like, okay, today is the recycling day. Okay, I'm gonna sponsor the banner in a couple of months for all the kids that graduated high school. You know, that shows like where they're going to college or something, right? I'm gonna put a little thing in their newsletter, right? I'm gonna tell the neighbors how awesome I am. Like Peggy does that, for example, right? And she takes that's a very important magazine in that neighborhood, right? And every realtor advertises, so it's very important that it looks the right way, it has the right message, etc., right? So this, by the way, is what I would call expensive, right? And it takes a long time. Again, I'm not telling you it's a bad idea, I'm telling you should lead with revenue, okay? So this is probably one of the most expensive ways of marketing, and it tends to be passive until you actually make it active. What I mean by that is passive would be I send out 500 postcards and hope to God somebody calls me. How you turn that to active is you send them 500 postcards, and the next day you knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'm the guy on the postcard that's in the trash can right now." Right? So that's active. Sending it out with no additional phone call, text, Facebook, door knocking, open house event, any of that, that's completely passive and most likely a waste of your money. It will probably make an impact after 1.5 to 2 years of you doing that. But if you expect to spend a few $100 on a mailer and do it once and quote not get anything and then say that's not for me, that's the wrong approach. That's basically just a waste of money. Okay? There's also this idea that I hear all the time of I want to be my own neighborhood expert. I don't know, do you? Is there enough turnover in your neighborhood? Is that the right price range that you want to target? Is it in the right area that you want to target? Right? Do enough people move every year? Right? Is there enough turnover? Right? Is there another dominant agent? So I'm not just going to select a neighborhood because I happen to own a home in the neighborhood. I'm going to select a neighborhood because the stats are the best, right? I used to live in a neighborhood where there were no garages, right? I didn't want to farm that neighborhood because I worked from home a lot, right? You could say that's a limiting belief, but there's hundreds of other neighborhoods that I was active in and I was successful, but I didn't want to put a ton of energy into my neighbors because they'd see my car at home all the time. like, does this dude even work? Right? So I didn't care about, like, sometimes I go out to the car in my pajamas. I don't wanna have to be on all the time, right? Home was my retreat. When I come here, that's when I'm a real estate agent. Make sense? Okay. Unless you have the money and the patience and a long-term plan, I would probably stay away from farming as a brand new agent. That's just my personal opinion. There's better uses of your money and time, okay, that are more actively driven. All right, let's talk a little bit about the models for a moment. Who has read the MREA book? Who wants to tell me what the models are?
Lead generation.
Nope.
uh,
Well, actually, I'm sorry, that's one. My bad. I was thinking about something different.
Economic, organizational. There's 4. Legion, economic, organizational. I'm lost on the 4th one.
Budget.
Budget.
Okay, so let's just walk through what this means. And by the way, if anyone's ever owned a business, it's the same models there too. Okay, tomorrow from, what is it, 2 to 3 or 1 to 2? We're gonna be doing a session on the economic model. Okay? It is,
I thought you changed it. Oh. You have like 11:30 to 12:30 PC assertive prospecting, and then 2 to 3 big PC big session.
yeah, and then I added the economic model is at 1 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
1 to 2. So we're gonna be diving into the economic model tomorrow in great detail, okay? Then lead gen, then budget, then organization. So let me give you the, a real quick overview of what these models are, okay? Economic model, that's gonna show you your numbers, okay? The very brief of that is you start with a goal. Your goal is usually an income number. Then you split it up into buyers and sellers. Then you split it up into average income or average commission. Then what you're trying to figure out is how many appointments do I need to have in order to get a certain number under contract, in order to get a certain number closed, in order to earn the amount of money that I want to earn, which goes right back up here. And based on that, how many appointments do I need in order to get there? And how many contacts am I gonna have to make based on the type of lead generating that I'm doing in order to secure those appointments? So if I'm cold calling a bunch of people circle prospecting, let's say, I'm gonna have to call more people to get one appointment than if I call a bunch of for sale by owners, right? Because for sale by owners have a home, they have an interest in selling their home. They're a hotter lead than somebody who wasn't expecting a call, who, hasn't expressed any interest in real estate. Make sense? So depending on who you're calling will depend on what your daily activity is gonna have to be in order to hit this goal. So what might spit out of that is, I need 25 appointments this year, and in order to get that, I need to make 15 contacts per day. Okay, great, now we know what work is. If you achieve that, you've worked, and you're on track. If you haven't done that, you're not on track, okay? So then you say, well, I need 15 contacts a day, so that takes us to the next model, which is the lead gen model. So, Heather, you don't like calling FSBOs?
Yeah.
Fine, I don't care. You gotta find the 15 appointments somewhere though,
I know.
okay? I'm not picking on you
No, you're right.
specifically.
gotta
I don't
say
care
that.
what you do to find them. I really don't. I want you to do something that makes you fulfilled and you're comfortable doing and blah, blah. I mean, I encourage you to step out of your comfort zone. If you've never made a cold call, I'd like you to try it, right? If you've never gone door knocking, if you feel safe doing it, do it, right? But you're gonna have to get the contact somehow so that you can book the appointments. Has anyone ever been to a closing where they did not have first an appointment? That ever happened to you?
No.
Never happened to me either. You were gonna say
I
something?
was gonna say, I don't mind doing the cold call to FSBOs. I cringe at going into strangers' houses when they're there. That's my issue. So I
Okay.
strap my mace on.
Whatever,
Yeah,
if
that's
you need
it.
to,
Like, I could schmooze them all day long over the phone, and then I gotta go there, and I'm like, I don't want to.
so So either bring a peer,
Right.
bring your spouse, bring your gun, bring your mace. I'm
No,
serious.
you're serious, no, I know.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Okay? But otherwise, it ain't gonna happen.
Right.
So the lead gen model basically has a list of, 100 different ways you can find business.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to know what your daily metric is to pick the strategy you're gonna pick. Okay? Then you go out and you've created a bunch of chaos, good for you. Okay? Then you just have to watch the budget, right? So budget is essentially the P&L, profit, loss. So how am I spending my money? Am I spending the appropriate amount of money on technology, the appropriate amount of money on lead gen? Am I the appropriate amount of money on education, travel, food and entertainment? Am I spending the appropriate amount of money on my buyer's agent or showing agent or listing specialist or ISA or runner or bookkeeper, or any of those people that are gonna be helping you build your business? We have best practices and ratios based on how big your organization gets. And the organizational model, right, this is essentially who does the work, right? And this, let's say this is Heather. Do you have anyone that's helping you in your business right now? Other than a coach?
No.
Okay, so this is your organizational chart, right? And that's okay, right? However, you're the CEO, you also have a lead generation department, an operations department, a sales department, these are also you. Right, like your business so far? Okay, this is an ISA, an OSA, a runner, this is a contract to close, a listings management person, a financial advisor, a bookkeeper, a runner, an intern. This is a showing agent, buyer's agent, lead buyer's agent, listing agent, lead listing agent, and you're all those people too,
Yeah, that's crazy.
right?
Yeah.
Do you believe that at some point you're gonna create so much business that you're gonna wake up and say, this is not what I signed up for?
Absolutely.
Perhaps I'm making $125,000 a year. I'm not making light of that, that's huge, right? But you basically say, oh, I don't care what your pre-approval letter says. I'm going home and going to bed, right? We've talked a little bit about that, this idea of, I'm not trying to offend anyone here, but most of us, I'd say, are probably in this area here, which is, you generally speaking have more time than money. As your business grows and you earn more money, you get to the point where you have more money than time. And that's when you start buying it back, right? Where you might say, Heather, I need somebody else to show these homes. Here's $50 a door, I'm going to hang out with my kids, right?
I've done that, yeah.
Of course. Or, maid, you clean the house.
I've done that too.
Housekeeper's at my house right now because I don't want to clean, right? And the housekeeper does all the stuff I don't want to do. And the babysitter watches the kids tonight while I'm on date night. I got the best babysitter in town. Lives across the street, $5 an hour.
Oh, wow.
CPR certified and the whole deal, you know? No, can't have her number.
No, my daughter is, well, I don't need a babysitter because my kids are grown, but my daughter, she runs a serious business babysitting. And she ain't charging $5.
I would be willing to bet she's employing these systems, whether she realizes it or not.
Yeah.
We used to have a friend who had like, I think, a 9-year-old son and had like 50-something clients for a dog walking business. And he had people walking the dogs. He was literally a 9-year-old, 7th level dog walking owner.
Good for him.
He had like 10 people that he hired to walk the dogs, and he owned the place, so he got all the profits.
He had his own multi-level marketing, that's awesome.
It's not multi-level marketing, is this a multi-level market business?
No, but.
Well, it's the same thing.
Okay. All right, technically, okay.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I'm good.
It's not multi-level, it's an organization. No different. Nothing fishy going on.
No,
Without this person, these guys don't have jobs. Make sense? Okay, so this is the evolution of how to run and grow a business. Now, once you know, let's go back to the economic model for a second. Once you know what you gotta do every day, you've gotta find time to do it. So, that's why we do the 1-3-5, that's why we do the 4-1, that's why we take that information into the calendar. So, I'll just say it for you guys right now. If I have not seen a copy of your 135 or 411, I would like to as soon as humanly possible. I want to give you feedback on it, and I want you to start using that tool so that you can identify what your priorities are. So once you identify what your priorities are, let's say your priorities are call 20 people, is go to 2 classes, let's just say this is per day. Go to 1 class, work out, make dinner, check Facebook, watch TV, read. Let's just say those are the things that you have an opportunity to do. Which ones are the priorities? Is it safe to say that it depends? Right? What's most important in your life? What are your goals? Now, I would venture to say check Facebook is probably not a priority for most of us, unless you're a Facebook consultant, right? However, the key is to know what you're supposed to do each day and what the priority is to achieve the big goal, which is most likely some form of income, right? And if checking Facebook doesn't move the needle in your business, don't do it, or don't do it as much. Instead of checking Facebook for 2 hours, see what life looks like by checking it for 1 hour, and do something different with that other hour, right? Does that make sense?
It's prioritizing.
It's prioritizing. Is reading important? I don't know, it depends. I think so too. Is watching TV important? Probably not as important as some of the others. Is making dinner important? Well, let's look at that for a moment. You gotta eat, but do you have to make the dinner? Right? So if you have more money than time, that might be something you outsource. Make sense? If you have, let's include this one for a second. You're gonna pick up kids from school. Is that a priority? Could you outsource it?
They're your kids, no.
Could you outsource it?
Surely.
Is that something that you want to do?
It depends on-
Like, I would be much more likely to outsource making of dinner than picking up my kids at school. Right? So it just depends on what it is, what standards you set for your life and for your business. Right? I used to take pride, I mean, I still do. I don't do it so much anymore, but picking up my kids and dropping them off at school. Right? So is that important to you? Is that a priority to you? Get clarity on it and then build a plan around it. Right? I get 0 fulfillment from folding clothes. So that is somebody else's job in my house, right? It's not my wife's, believe me. She was willing to outsource it before I was, okay?
So
But-
what was the 411 and what's the other one you wanted?
So it starts with the GPS, then it goes to the 4-in-1, and then it goes to the calendar. And you can have a GPS for every goal that you have in life, every big goal. So at one point I had 4 GPSs. I had a GPS for running my sales team. I had a GPS for being the team leader. I had a GPS for making $100,000 in profit share in a year. And I had a GPS for my assistant. Basically just to prove to myself that I couldn't do it all myself. Because I was looking at a task list that it's been my task list for years. Because I was right here and I hadn't paid somebody else to my time yet. Does that make sense? Okay, if we then go back to accountability, well, if you've identified what your priorities are, you just have to share those with your accountability partner. So Kim and I were talking earlier today, and we said, you should interview your accountability partner. By the way, if you Ramp Up gives some instructions on accountability partners. If you don't have one, either look to this room for it or the Ramp Up community for it, or let me know and I'll help you find one. Okay. But when you have an accountability partner, one of the very first conversations should be is, Alexa, in order for me to be the best accountability partner possible for you, I need to know what it is you want. Right? So let's start. Tell me what you want. You don't have to tell me now, but boom, 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 boom. This is what I'm gonna ask you about. Right? How often would you like me to hold you accountable? Well, what I'd like for you to do is at 5 o'clock each day, I want you to text me how many contacts you made and how many appointments you set. And once a week, I want to spend 10 minutes with you on the phone talking about overcoming whatever challenge we're having the hardest time with. Right? So you set expectations, you tell them what you need, and you hold them to that standard. Right? So Kim says, well, Kathy, will you be my accountability partner? Kathy says yes. Kim says, all right, cool, I got an accountability partner. And I believe that you guys could be great accountability partners, but I want to make sure that you hold each other. It's a serious thing, because your dreams and your goals and your money and your success is dependent on how well she is at being your accountability partner, right? So if you've agreed to talk on Sunday night and she doesn't call you, she's letting you down. And she's letting your family down. And she's letting your grandkids down, or whoever is dependent on you, right? And you can call her and say, hey, I need this to be serious. Say, hey, you know, something came up, so I forgot to make calls today. What should Kathy say? Oh, dear, that's just fine, no big deal. No, she should say, all right, Kim, is this still your goal? Yes. Okay. And just to review, you didn't do anything today, is that right? That's correct. What are we going to do tomorrow to make up? Because you're telling me it's still important to you. So I can't let you off the hook. Right? That goes back to habits. Does everyone brush their teeth every day? Why? Why do you,
Because it's good hygiene, but also because it's a habit.
right? Do you shower every day? Why? Okay, so we've made a habit out of that. Right? Do you floss every day? Bullshit.
I swear to God. I swear to God. I do.
Oh my gosh.
I have like dental issues, so I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is pointed at me, so no one will be able to tell, but does anyone not floss every day?
I don't floss it.
Neither do I. Okay. So why does she do it, but you don't do it?
It's something that I've never done.
Because she has the habit and you don't.
Yeah.
Right? You go to bed and you hadn't flossed, you feel weird, you can't even go to bed. Doesn't matter how tired you are, you're gonna floss because that's what Heather does. But you don't feel that way, you're like, whatever. I floss whenever I feel like it. I floss whenever my wife puts the floss like next to my toothpaste. She said, dude, you hadn't flossed in like 4 days, get your shit together.
I actually
Right.
heard that the average person only buys 2 feet of floss in their lifetime. So it's just like not a big deal for people. I hate those. I have braces, I've just been like, it's been a habit for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it make sense? When something is important to you, you do it because that's what you do. Right? Were you the one that shared that video, the Will Smith video?
No, but whoever did, that was fantastic. I sent it
Who
to my
shared
whole
that?
family, Stephanie.
Oh, Stephanie, right.
Stephanie in the group, it was so good. If you have 10 minutes, watch it.
What is it? Which one is it?
It's in the.
Watch that every day, y'all. That's some serious stuff
It's,
there.
honestly, I sent it to all of my kids. We have 6 kids. I sent it to all 6 kids, my son-in-law and Joe, and I was like, everybody has to watch this today.
Right.
It's in our group.
Yeah, watch that. It basically tells you that, well, I won't ruin it. Okay, since we've only had one addition, you guys are more than welcome to stay as long as you want. What we talked a little bit about was, and we can go into more details since if you guys are here, because I'm here for the next 2 hours, and I want to make sure you guys get the most out of this. What we did is we talked a little bit about what topics you wanted to cover and what classes you wanted to cover to get the most value out of this. Okay? Cool. Don't forget, if you're not part of these groups, let me know as soon as you can. I have a ramp-up book for you back in my office. Don't let me forget about that.
Everyone have a good evening.
All right, take care. Okay, we talked about, basically, we made a list of things that we wanted to cover that were most relevant based on where we are in our business. So we talked about accountability, prioritization, talked a little bit about habit forming, the models, referrals, scripts, farming, presentations, value proposition, and some of the tools that we need to use. We had alluded to some of these ideas where we're learning every day. What are we gonna learn? The key to all of this, guys, the key to building and running a big business is knowing what to do all the time, right? Until your one thing is done, everything else is a distraction, right? So what does that presuppose? That presupposes we know what our one thing is, right? So I would venture to say that your one thing for everyone that is in the room, based on the productivity that I am aware of for all of you, is actually quite simple. It is database, it is tools and systems, and it is appointments. Nothing else is more important than this stuff, okay? So, who am I gonna service, and how am I gonna service them? And how much of that can I automate? And how big can I get it, right? So I think let me pick on you for a second, Tevin. How big is your database? 100? Okay. If 100 people, those 100 people walked in the front door and Melody said, Tevin's in the building somewhere, go find him, how many of them could identify who you were?
I'd say at least 90%.
90%? Okay. So let's just say you have 90 people in your database. According to the math and according to the new model of MREA, you should have 9 closings a year to come out of that. Is 9 closings what your goal is?
More.
9 closings is more, or your goal is more?
Goal is more.
Okay, so if you communicate with these 90 people in a perfectly systematic way, with the exact right message at the exact right time, with the exact right frequency and the exact right level of intensity, you will see 9 transactions. But your goal is more, so where is that gonna come from?
More people.
More people, right? So the question is how big do I have to get this? And what types of people am I gonna put in there, right? For example, it's not gonna do you a whole lot of good to put a bunch of people who don't have the financial means to buy or sell real estate in there, right? So how big can you get the database so it'll spit out more clients, right? So one of your chief goals should be growing this. Does everyone agree with that? Okay. The next goal I would say is, what are the systems and tools that I need to use in order to, and I would include technology in this, right? In order to move the needle in my business, right? And then lastly, how am I gonna take these people and meet with them, right? How can I drum up more appointments? The more people I present to, the more money I will make. Simple as that. How can I get in front of more people? If you just focus on those things, your business will rocket. Okay? Now, is Facebook scrolling in here? Is mowing the lawn in here? No. Is cleaning the gutters in here? Is playing golf in here? Could be. Could be, you're right. Absolutely. So my point is that everything that you're doing right now, particularly newer agents, should be around building the database and learning the tools, right? With the intent of taking these and getting in front of people to present to them. And of course you say, well, what the hell am I gonna present? Well, we need to learn the different presentations. The buyer presentation, the seller presentation, how to handle the objections, maybe how to show property, maybe how to price property, right? How do I use all the tools that we're given to maximize my likelihood of getting paid? Does that make sense? And then, so if you can focus on these 3 things, you're golden. But be very, very clear that if you don't know what your priorities are, or you don't know when you've, worked for the day, you will walk in the door at your office and sit down and you'll say, what should I do? Right? You'll say, I don't really know what to do. Let me go see if anyone's messaged me on Facebook. Let me go check my email and see if anyone else's priorities are in there. That'll help me dictate what I'm supposed to do throughout the day, right? Instead, what I want you to do is say, it's so great to be at work. Let's take a quick look at my 135. What am I supposed to do today? Let's take a quick look at my 411. Ooh, I'm a little behind on appointments. Where's my headset? Right? That way you know exactly what you're supposed to do every single day. So, any questions on that? All right, I'm gonna go to another idea that we're talking a lot about now on the leadership side, and we kind of touched on this for a couple minutes the other day, but I think this is appropriate for this group. Okay. This is the lifespan of your real estate experience, okay, of a real estate transaction. Okay, this is when you get paid, this is when you start. Average commission, let's just say, is $10,000. Now, we're gonna draw this little line here, we're gonna draw this line here, okay? From here to here is when the client gets serious, okay? They say that's about 7 to 10 weeks, buyer or seller. So 7 to 10 weeks on average prior to the closing taking place is when your prospect is the most serious. Make sense? Okay, and then this is lead gen. So this is, we'll just call this transaction management. Everyone follow that? What do we think this is?
Follow up.
Good. Okay. So, let's start over here, okay? What we know is that basically every single thing that you do more than one time should be turned into a system. Make sense? So you can look at your transaction management and say, what do we do? These are like a lot of what will ultimately become the checklists, right? When we get an opportunity to sit down with a serious buyer, a serious seller, what do we do? What do we do next? What do we do after that? What do we do after that? Right? So these are a bunch of checklists with respect to the processes of preparing for the appointments, going on the appointments, following up from the appointments, sending them the paperwork, reviewing the paperwork, getting the home on the market, showing the properties, sending feedback, getting the contract shared, all that kind of stuff, right? So this is, you can tie that to the tech piece and command of opportunities. Okay, and then you go through the different phases and stages and opportunities to tie all these checklist items in here so that everyone gets the same experience. Okay? Then you say to yourself, this is how they teach us how to do the lead gen side, is where is your business coming from? So you would sit down with an agent and say, Heather, can you tell me, I want you to think of all the transactions that you've had in the last 12 months. You want to do this live?
Sure.
Okay. Rattle off where the source of that lead came from.
A few were from open houses, and literally the rest were referrals from those people I helped from those open houses.
So basically, if you didn't do those open houses, you wouldn't have any business.
Yeah.
How many closings was that?
9.
And how many do you think were in each one?
Oh, from the open house was 3.
Yeah? Does everyone get that?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and by the way, she hosted an open house for me the other day, and rocked it. Lots of business, she's got a listing appointment, $500,000 listing. Please sell it for $500,000, will you?
I'll bump your value up.
Yes, it will,
Promise.
right? And then she had a system of extracting referrals from these people, so she could then have 2/3 more times closings, right?
Well, can I ask you a question
Yeah.
about open houses? So, a couple of agents have said, come sit with me at open houses, but to me, that seems like, why am I coming to sit with you at an open house? Is that not a waste of my time? Because a lead that comes through the door, is it not that agent's lead if I'm not working the open house by myself? Or is that up to the agent?
If they said, come sit at the open house,
Yeah, like.
that's
how
a,
would-
that's a different use of your time.
Right.
So I said, Heather, come do the open
That's
house.
what I'm saying,
And then she has an opportunity to find leads and get practice.
right.
If instead I said, Heather, I want you to watch me do the open house, I'm offering her a different offering. What I'm offering her, yeah, it's the education.
Yeah.
So is that a waste of your time? It's no more of a waste of your time than sitting in here with me right now. Are you learning something?
Yeah, but I mean.
It's not a waste of your time then.
No, I know, but after you do that a couple of times, I mean.
Yeah, I agree. Now, I don't know that you have to do it multiple times with the same agent,
Right.
but if you got a chance to do an open house every Sunday for the next 10 weeks with the 10 top open house agents in town, is that worth your while? I think it is.
Also, you can think about like you hosting an open house yourself on a Sunday and sitting with an agent on a Saturday.
Exactly. Or you sit with the agent for an hour
Right.
while they're prepping, and their open house is from 1 to 4, and you're with them from, let's say 10 to 1, and then you do your open house right around the corner from 2 to 4 also. Whatever. Is it a waste of your time? It depends. Did you learn anything? Did you have fun? Did you get any fulfillment from it? Did you make any money? It's worth it. Did you learn nothing? Did you not make any money? Were you miserable? It's not worth your time. Sometimes I feel like that seems so direct, but
No, I was just questioning like the leads that come through the door.
they're most likely theirs.
Right.
I think if somebody says like host an open house with me, then you have to ask them like define host.
Yeah, right.
Because
Right.
I've done that with a friend of mine, like he's an agent from my other office in North Atlanta, and we hosted and we gave every other. So 5 people came in, every other, and then we both took the 5th. And we were like, oh, we'll just follow up with them.
That is pretty generous in my opinion.
Well, he did me a favor. It was like all the way incoming in like Farmville, and I didn't wanna do it by myself because I was scared. And he was an ex-cop, so I was like, come and bring your gun. So, he did me a favor and I threw him some leads,
Yeah.
honestly.
I'm not trying to scare anyone here, but there have been some pretty tragic things that have happened.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Right? So if you have any concern, you need to either avoid that situation or you need to put them through some type of hoops. Like, hey, my broker requires that I meet you at the office first during business hours, and we take a copy of your driver's license and blah, blah, blah. Right? We had I don't think she'd mind me sharing this, we had an agent who got a call, she had a very expensive listing, right? Somebody wanted to see it, and it just the call didn't seem right to her, right? And it turns out that she called me and she's like, what should I do? And I said, if you're telling me you're uncomfortable, then you shouldn't go. I don't need to hear a whole lot more than that, right? It turns out the seller did some quick research on the guy and he was out on parole, right? And a lot of his violations were like identity stuff and money fraud and like all these kind of things. You think that guy's likely to buy $1 million house? No. See what I'm saying? Just be smart. No real estate transaction, no customer's worth you feeling unsafe. Okay, so then you would say, well, how does this, walk me through that open house. Like, what do you do on Monday? What do you do on Tuesday? What do you do on Wednesday? You don't have to do that with me now, but give me all the details, right? What's the system for that, okay? Is there anything in this that we can automate? How can we use technology to make it more efficient, right? What technologies we're using to do it, right? And then, this includes the day of, includes all the follow-up, all that. Because this is what generated these, right? So what did that system look like? And then when you got that buyer that says, oh, I'm also interested in buying a home, what did that look like, right? When did you meet them? What did you promise them? When did you put them into the CRM? Did you write them a note? What was your email like? Did you set them up on a search? Did you invite them in for a buyer consultation? All that, when did you send them to the lender? All that. Write it all out. how can you use technology to make this more efficient? And by the way, whose job is it? Right? So first you should look for the system, then you should look for the technology, and then you should look for the people or the person. Make sense? Same thing with follow-up. So some of this was actually kind of over here. So what's the deal with the follow-up? So the lead comes into your system, well, what do you do with it then? How many times do you have to touch them in order for them to get serious about the buying process? Now, this is essentially this is where smart plans come in, right? So then you're saying, I think a few of you were in here when I drew this the other day, this drawing, and who was in here that saw this? Touch on this real briefly. This is the day that a buyer buys a home or a seller sells a home. This is the next day. This lead is burning hot, paychecks coming off the printer. Ain't nothing happened with that person the next day. Has anyone ever worked with a buyer that bought a home and the next day they bought another home? Neither, me either. Okay, so chances are, once that deal is done, it's gonna be 3 to 7 years before they're ready to buy or sell again. Make sense? Now, the question is there's this idea of what's called emotional proximity. Okay, emotional proximity is how close emotionally is the idea of you and your real estate business to their mind when they think about real estate, right? Are they closer emotionally to Mark Spain or you? Right? Well, they see Mark Spain signs 4 times a day. Right? Make sense? So what are you doing during all that? Well, technically this, right? In between the time that they're done with their previous real estate transaction and they're ready to buy again or sell again, how many times are you touching them? What frequency, what intensity, what mode, right? Is it hyper-local, right? If, let's say you guys both live in Sandy Springs and you're in my database. And let's just say you own a $200,000 townhome in Sandy Springs and you own a house near Chastain that's a $2 million house, okay? If I send you the same neighborhood newsletter that says like, Sandy Springs real estate is doing great. The average days in the market is 15, and the average home sells for 98.5% of list price. That is not particularly helpful to either of you. Make sense? Because it's not hyper-local to your needs. You both live in Sandy Springs, but you have one type of property and you have a different type of property. So how do we make sure that you get the content you need and you get the content you need? That comes from the smart plans and the neighborhood nurtures and all that, right? So how frequently are you sending it? Are you texting them afterwards? How frequently do they see your face? Are you sending them any other type of mail? Are you calling them on their birthday? Are you calling them 3 days before their birthday? Are you calling them when it's time to file for homestead exemption? Are you calling them when it's time to invite them to the team event or whatever, right? And the more touches with the more intensity that you have between here and here, the more likely you'll be to get the transaction. Well, almost all of that can be automated, right? Well, if you choose not to automate it, how do you make sure it happens when you're also busy doing all this and you're also busy doing all this for somebody different? Inevitably, something's gonna fall through the cracks, particularly when you have all these jobs, right? That's the beautiful thing about a team. And I can argue very strongly team or no team. But I will tell you, all a team is one person who had goals that were too big to accomplish alone and still maintain the quality of life they were initially seeking. That's all a team is, okay? So I go out and I set my goals and I say, okay, I wanna make 200 grand, okay? I found personally, I think I've shared this with you guys, every dollar from about 0 to 75,000, this is just my story, I'm not saying it's a lot or a little. I could make about $75,000 a year, essentially no stress, okay? Well, I wanted to make more than that, okay? $75,000 to $150,000, every dollar I made was at the expense of my personal life. Kathy, you feel that? Yep. Well, I wanted to make more than 150 too, right? So everything from 150 higher with no help, it wasn't gonna happen for me. I was worn out, I was exhausted, had a shitty quality of life, excuse me, and I still wasn't happy financially, right? So what was I gonna do? Well, I kinda had three options. One, this is interesting, I never really thought about it this way. I kinda had three options. One is I retreat here so that I can have a stress-free life, right? Two is I retreat here where I almost like have some kind of pride in being a super busy, non-family real estate agent. Well, yeah, I'm a real estate agent. I work every Saturday, and I work every Sunday, and I don't take vacations, and I work every night, and I work every weekend. Aren't you like jealous you're not a real estate agent like me? No, I'm not. I'm actually very unimpressed with you because you don't have a coach in your life. You are too damn stubborn to hire anyone, and you have no idea how to prioritize anything. Right? That's how I feel. Right? And so you could wear that badge of honor until you collapse showing homes. Okay? Or you can grow. Does that make sense? So you can retreat to where it was nice and safe. You can stay where you're at, or you can have some help. Does that make sense to everyone? Does that resonate with anybody? By the way, it's the same thing with owning any business. Okay? Let's say you own a coffee shop. If you're the person cleaning the place, opening the place, closing up the place, making all the drinks, ringing them all up, you're gonna have a great life until you don't have a great life. And at that moment, you can either revert back to selling 20 cups of coffee and being able to do it all, selling 50 cups of coffee a day and making okay money but being stressed all the time, or just hire somebody to run the register and sell 3 times as many and everyone makes more money. Make sense? So a team, there's nothing wrong with a team. All a team is just one person that had a vision too big to execute alone. It's no big deal. Does that make sense? Have you always thought about teams that way? How have you thought about teams?
Well, for my husband and I?
Let's consider the two of you together.
Okay, so, yeah, for me, a team was just agents just wanting to grow and help each other out, but not like in the way that you said it. It's just like this one particular agent having a vision that was too much and so getting help, so I love that.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? So by the way, you also have to be the type of person that is going to attract the right talented people to fulfill your mission, right? So let's say I know nothing about being a leader, or I know nothing about being a business person, or I know nothing about being organized or generous or kind, or I don't have good values, right? Yet I've created a bunch of chaos and I need help. Well, who's gonna work with me? I don't know. If I get the right person, they'll stay with me for a week or two until I'm exposed, right? If I get the wrong person, it's just gonna be a disaster from the start, right? So as you're building all of this, you better also be working on your you, right? What you know, how you express it, how you give, how you share, right? Because if I'm a jerk, nobody's gonna wanna work with me, right? If I don't know anything, nobody's gonna wanna work with me, right? And if by chance I end up with a really talented person, they're gonna be in and out of my life in a heartbeat because they're gonna be like, you an unorganized idiot. I'm out of here, right? I'm gonna go work for somebody that's got their stuff together. Make sense? Okay, so if you're not familiar with the opportunities section of Command, from the phases to the stages and the checklist, if you're not familiar with how to set up the SMART plans and the neighborhood nurture campaigns, I'm gonna ask you to spend a little time on that. That should be your learning for the short term, okay?
So this is where you put the contacts in and you put the neighborhood and then you create the smart plan to associate that.
That's correct. Well, you put the contact in. Now it pre-populates the neighborhood that next door says is that location. And then you can set them up on a smart plan that basically says, I'm gonna send them this link every 2 weeks or every month to notify them of what's going on in their hyper-local neighborhood. Okay. All right, what else? So I'll just talk to you guys like you're the group that's scheduled for this time. You guys are selling 4 to 10 homes a year, or 4 to 10 homes ever. What challenges are you facing that you're not currently getting addressed?
Well, I'm right there in the middle where I don't have, I mean, not money-wise, but I'm in the middle where I have too much and I don't have the help. So that's my challenge right now, is I have to figure out, I have to get organized and figure it out. Because Michael's part-time, so it's really just me.
Yep. So what I would then, let's separate the tasks for a second.
Sure.
Okay, so who's heard of the 80-20 principle? Somebody tell me what that is.
20% of your efforts produce 80% of results.
Yep.
Yes.
You're familiar with this, right?
I've heard of it, yeah.
There's a Italian economist from the 1800s. His name is Alfredo Pareto, right? This is, and by the way, these are things that these are business principles, right? So as you're becoming a business owner, business leader, these are things you ought to be learning about, right? So Gary Keller talks a lot about this idea of the 80-20 principle. What Pareto found is that 20% of his pea pods were yielding 80% of the peas in his garden. And 80% of his pea pods were yielding 20% of the peas in his garden. So he's trying to figure out what's the relationship. How do I get more pea pods like this that'll have more peas in them? Then he started looking around for other data sets, and he realized that 20% of the land in Italy was owned by 80% of the people, and 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the people. And ultimately what it yielded was that almost in every data set there was, 20% of the inputs created 80% of the outputs and vice versa. So do you also think that it's fair to say that 20% of the real estate agents make 80% of the money? If I was to guess, I would say it's probably more like 95% of the real estate agents make 5% of the money, and 5% of the agents make 95% of the money. But let's just assume for a second it's 80-20. Okay. That would also beg the question of, well, what are those agents doing? What are they spending their time doing that's creating more results or better, more efficient results? So KW had said there's 5 things that you should be doing that are the 20% work, right? Does anyone know what those are?
One has to be lead gen.
Right. Lead gen,
Lead gen, script practice.
lead follow-up,
Lead follow-up.
going on appointments, negotiating, and script practice and role play. Did anyone see posting on Facebook on this list? Did anyone see putting a listing in the system on that list?
That's true. What about what Justin just said?
I didn't hear what you said.
No, I said, what if the Facebook post is helping you with lead gen? Oh, you're not talking about that Facebook post?
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
You're talking about the personal one, okay.
Right, so, these are the things you should be spending your money on so that it yields 80% of the result. Something like adding the listing to MLS, or making a flyer, or dropping off flyers, or scheduling the termite inspection, these are not things that, while they're important and while they have to get done, they're not gonna move the needle in your business, right? So therefore, they should be secondary, right? And every moment you have when you're kind of evaluating, okay, I got 15 things to do, what is the most important thing that needs to get done right now? And chances are, it's not scheduling the inspection. Chances are it's something a little bit more important. Then, You then make a list of all the other things that have to get done, the 80% stuff, and then you start assigning those to other people. Right? So even if you're not prepared to hire a full-time assistant or even a part-time assistant, maybe you go to Robin T and said, hey, I've been told, my coach told me putting listings in the system is 80% work, and I've been told that I pay you to do that work. Is that correct? And she says, absolutely. And then you meet with her and you say, okay, this is how I want the system, this is how I want listings to go. Are you my person? Yep, great. Ain't gotta do that anymore. Make sense? So everything that you're trying to like figure out, like, is this an 80% activity or a 20% activity? If it's a 20% activity, put it in your calendar. If it's an 80% activity, either put it in Michael's or put it in somebody else's. Right? Or put it in your calendar knowing that that's not the most efficient use of your time right now, but you're trying to capitalize enough where you don't have to do it anymore. Make sense? You have a thought? Okay. Is everyone else, are we clear on kind of the 80-20 idea? Okay, what else do you want to learn about?
I know this is probably not the right one, but CMAs, I mean, I've done it before, but is there art around getting it accurate? Because sometimes it's pretty easy when you have a lot of properties in one subdivision, so it's easy to figure out, but then sometimes there's properties that doesn't fit. And how do we get the knowledge on how to do that?
Here's what I would say about that. I always found, and if you guys want to chime in, those that have been in the business for a little while, you're obviously more than welcome to. But what I used to do when I would be visiting with a seller was to say, look, your home is going to appear on an email that, along with some other properties, and the buyer's agent is going to send this email to the buyer. And they're going to say, here's a bunch of homes that fit your criteria, pick the ones you want to see. And the only way they're going to pick yours is if the pictures are good, right? It's superior to the other homes that they're grouped with, and the price seems reasonable. Okay? If it doesn't fit that, they're not coming anyway, right? So we got to get the price right. Now, in an effort to get the price right, let's pretend like we're buyers, right? So where is that home, which list is that house going to have to appear on for us to want to go, right? In other words, what else is it likely that our buyer might be considering if and when they consider our listing? Make sense? So for example, we can go hyper local, which might be the neighborhood. Let's say there's 4 or 5 streets in the neighborhood, and there's, let's say one sale is, $295, and one sells $305, and one sells $308, and one sells $285, and one sells $325. Something like that, right? So what you try to do is you try to, what I would call, bracket the home. Bracketing the home is essentially finding at least one property that is more impressive than the subject property, right? So it's either larger, maybe it's got a basement, maybe it's got more updates, maybe it's got an extra bedroom, maybe it's something like that. And I'd also find at least one home that's bracketed on the low end, where everyone in the world would agree that the subject property is more impressive than the one I'm looking at. Okay, so then let's say that home, let's say that's the low bracket, and let's say that's the high bracket.
So 285 and 325?
Yeah. So now we know that home is probably in between those two prices. Fair to say?
Yeah.
So let's go through more detail. This 305 sale and the 295 sale, what are we thinking? Right? Say, I feel like it's a little closer to this than this. Right? Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I never said, okay, well, this one is, $115.50 per square foot, and this one was $117.50. I never got down to in the weeds like that. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just telling you, I was a little bit more by feel, okay? But I would go through this research and I'd say, okay, well, I'm thinking it's probably within this range now, but it's probably closer to this, right? So then I would say, all right, good to know. Let's go take another grouping of homes. So let's go into the middle school district or the elementary school district or something of that nature. I'd expand a little bit. I'd say, what are the other homes that they could possibly look at or possibly evaluate, actives, pendings, and sales, that are roughly in this price range, that are roughly a similar home, right? Roughly the same age. Like, is there a difference between the value of a home that was built in 1984 versus 1985? No, right? And really, it only has to do with what's on the market competing with you now, right? So I might say, well, gosh, there's a bunch of homes that tend to be closer to this number that are not as impressive on the market right now. Well, maybe I'll push it a little bit more then, right? Well, this guy says he needs to sell right away. And there's a home listed for $298 that has an extra bedroom and it's been on the market for 2 weeks. Now we know we should probably be closer over here. Make sense?
Yeah.
So we're evaluating how is the market reacting to the competition that we believe we're competing with, right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said you'll do the public school, elementary school, and middle school. Do you think it's like better to do the lower grades than it is the higher grades, like the high school?
I only picked that because it's a tighter range.
Okay, right, because the high schools come in from a little bit further.
Right.
Okay,
Or tighter geographic range.
right.
Yeah. Now I might look just to double check my work, right? So let me just take a look at the, let's say I'm evaluating 15 comps in the elementary school and I'm evaluating 30 comps in the middle school and I'm evaluating 75 comps in the high school. And based on my stuff, I say, I think the price here is $325. Okay, then I might go out to the middle school and double check to make sure there's nothing more impressive for $325 or less than the home I'm about to list. Then I might go do the same thing for the high school. Because what I want is I want them to see that home and say, damn, those are some good pictures. I wanna go see that home. Ooh, I wonder what it's priced at. And they look at the price like, no way. And then what do? They call their agent and they're like, now, get me there now. And they walk in the door and there's a bunch of people there because it's an attractive property that's well priced. And they rush back to the office and they write it up. And then I don't have to go make no flyers. I don't have to host no open houses. I'll see you at the closing table. Make sense? I was on a run for probably about 7 or 8 years where I had one house that it took me 45 days to sell, and every other listing I had sold in a week.
Was it a price issue?
That one, I don't remember, to be honest, but see, you're supposed to say, man, you're good at pricing, not pick
I
them.
just wondered why it's
Pick the
set
bad
for
one.
45
The bad
days.
one
Yeah,
sticks out,
damn.
right?
Well, I was wondering why it's set for 45 days, so like I have a house that's gonna go live at the beginning of April and it's 545, it's the largest home I've ever listed. But I really went into the price and figured out that this is a decent price, and then, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh man, did you price it right? Like, I second guess myself. So when you're saying it sits there for a while, my brain is thinking, is a price.
Oh, that's the question you're asking? Yes. If a home is sitting more than the average time it takes to sell a home on the market, it's the price.
Well, that house would have sat for more than the average time, I imagine.
Right, but if I had priced it better,
Right. So that comes back to my question, was it the price?
yeah, then I guess
Yeah.
you
Because
tough.
it could have been your seller.
Watch out for her.
It could have been your seller too, maybe they didn't want to grant access, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh no.
No,
we
they
can
were good
show-
there.
Right.
They were good there.
But I think the point he was making though is that
No, I
he's
get
so
it.
good at pricing.
I totally get it, but
That's
in
the
my
point I
brain,
was trying to make.
I'm
He's
sitting
so
on
good
the
at
other side of the
pricing
fence,
for
like,
7
did I
years.
price this right? So it made me just think about my
He
own.
was selling each house in 2 days? 2 days out there?
That was probably 4 or 5 days, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That
Now,
was excellent, good job.
thank you. Now, the other thing that we might consider is, we don't wanna, let's say that the person's gotta go paint the place and recarpet the place and do some exterior maintenance or something like that. I don't wanna give them the price until literally 5 minutes before I put it on the computer, right? So I'll say, hey, I think our range is somewhere in here, let's revisit this when you're done with the renovations. right? Because we need to see, has there been anything else that's gone under contract or hit the market or sold that might impact should we be on the lower or the higher range of this? That make sense? By the way, it's a team effort. So I would say to them, here's the list of homes that your buyer's gonna be looking at when they're looking at your home. What do you think about the price?
That's
And I'll-
before you tell them the price?
Yeah,
Okay.
Even price range, Melva said the other day, always, never just say, here's your price.
right.
Give 'em a range.
I'd say, Electa, I just want you to tell me what you think your home is worth, right? Now, I've talked people out of prices before, and they've talked me into prices before, right? So they'll come back and say, I think it's 300. I said, I don't think so. I think it's 280, and here's why. Or they could come back and say, I think it's 300. I said, you're crazy. I paid 325 for this all day long. Here's why, right? Now, if somebody says 380 and then I come back at a higher price, they trust me immediately, right? Because what could I have done?
Say, okay.
I said, okay, my dad could have come in here and bought it for 300. See what I'm saying?
So I have a question regarding that. I'm sorry, I haven't lost. It took a long time to sell 2 listings for me before, and it was because I feel like I am actually very good at comps, and my homes almost always sell around the price I suggested, but I've had 2 clients that wouldn't take my comps, they, no matter what. They're like, oh, but I've put, $30,000 in this and this and this, and I'm like, yeah, but that's not where the money is, and anyway, so they had to reduce the price and the home took longer to sell. So, any advice on those
Yeah.
situations?
Ask them for their data, right?
Yeah.
Help me understand where the evidence is to support your opinion. It's not adversarial. It's, hey, maybe I missed something. So show me the data that you're using,
But
right?
it didn't work for them. They wanted their home priced at like $260. It
I
sold
get
at-
it, but
Yeah.
you have to support it with data.
Right, I do, yeah.
No, they
They
do.
do.
So you're the agent, you say, hey, I think it's 265, and they're like, no, I think it's 300. And you say, do you have any data to support the price of 300? And they say no, you say, am I in the twilight zone here?
Right.
Like, what the hell?
Where'd you get that number from? Yeah.
So I've got somebody, right, so I've got somebody who did, well, actually, both of them did. They absolutely had, all these things that they did.
Say when a
but-
buyer and a buyer's agent and the buyer's appraiser,
Yeah.
or the lender's appraiser, is gonna evaluate the price. Let's just assume for a second that you had a buyer that was willing to pay 300.
Right.
Okay, their agent is gonna review the comps, and the agents, and the lender, buyer's lender's appraiser is gonna review the comps. So in order to defend your price, I need to see some data to support the fact that you think it's valued here. Cause if I don't see any evidence, then I can't argue on your behalf, right?
Yeah, I just always.
Now, I have
felt-
taken my clients to their competition in person,
Oh, okay.
okay? Say, here's a person, I think the house should sell for, 275, and they think it should sell for 300. And I say, there ain't no evidence to support 300. They're like, well, I think there is. I said, get in the car. And we go around the corner, and there's a house with a basement, with an extra bedroom and better appliances for 285, and it's been on the market for 2 months. So which house are you gonna buy? Well, this one. Well, then we can't be above 285. And if they just will not acknowledge reality, and they are like totally nuts, then you have to determine if the time that you're going, time and money and energy, and the loss of the time, money, and energy you could be spending on a better client is worth it, right? As I got married and I had my kids, I got a whole lot stingier with the people I worked with, right? So if you weren't gonna go and have a buyer consult with me, we ain't working together. If you're a bigot and you don't wanna live next to black people or orange people or green people, I ain't gonna work with you. I'm not going down that road, right? If you're late all the time, forget it. Not working with you, right? If you don't do anything I suggest, we're done, right? If you crazy, I'm not leaving my kids to go deal with you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you should start to set some of those standards ahead of time, because your time is incredibly valuable. You just told me you don't have a lot of time, so you just proved to me that your time is valuable. So where's the evidence? Who are you turning down?
I have the appraiser conversation all the time with buyers and
Yeah.
sellers, all the time. Like, we could list at this price, and predominantly, like, if it's a price I think is reasonable, but I'm like, if you don't, if your house is not appraising for it, and your buyers don't have money to put down, it's a total bust and a waste of time. So now we have to spend more days on market, and, it's just gonna look bad for the house. Let's price it right.
Well, here's a slightly different spin on that. Let's say, for example, the price is 300 and that's their price and it's too much. And you think it should be, let's say, 280, okay? And the home goes live. How many people are in the world right now? About 8 billion, okay? So the home sits on the market for a week or two, and then it sits on the market for another week or two. And the seller's getting a little frustrated, and they say, why aren't you doing enough open houses? And you say, it don't matter how many open houses I do, the price is wrong.
Right.
Well, how do you know the price is wrong? I know because it's on 40,000 websites, and there's 8 billion people in the world, and not a single one of them wants this place,
Right. I also
right?
did it-
As a matter of fact, you believe this home is worth more than any of those people, right? Because you will not take less than 300, which means you believe your home is more valuable than any other of this 8 billion people in the world, right?
I'm also a fan of putting it in the brokerage agreement, like, hey, if the house is on the market for, 14 days, we'll deduct it by like 2.5 or 2%, or, based on the price. I try to get them to allow me to put that in there prior to us signing.
If there's a lot of
Most
pushback
times
on the
they do.
listing, I would do that. I
Yeah.
actually never did that when I was selling, but it's good to bring up those things. Hey, if we go 10 days, no showings, we're overpriced. We go 10 showings, no offer, we're overpriced. We go 30 days in the market and we haven't got a contract, we're overpriced.
I like to have that conversation up front, because I
Of
feel
course.
like it sets an expectation.
Yeah.
Because if we go 14 days and we have no showings, and they're like, what are you doing? You said you were gonna do all this great stuff. Then I've already had this
Say,
conversation.
here's my
with them
calendar.
back.
Here's when I
Yeah.
did this, here's when I did this, here's when I did this, here's when I did this, here's when my team did this, here's the evidence of this work. We're at the wrong price.
Right.
Right?
I'm doing everything.
It's kind of like, okay, how much is gas right now?
250?
No,
You've been in the
Yeah.
hiding out.
206.
You've been in quarantine.
Okay.
Gas is less than $2,
Is it
Yeah,
really?
198.
let's just say it's $2, okay? So, what are you gonna pay for gas? Around $2, right? So, let me ask you this question. Let's say there was a gas station around the corner, and they were selling gas for $2.50. How much gas do you think they'd sell? Okay, what if they advertised in all of the newspapers and on all the websites, and they had fireworks coming out the top of the gas station, and they were flying blimps left and right, and they had balloons everywhere, telling the world that they were selling gas for $2.50? How much gas do you think they'd sell?
Same as when there's no outside.
That's exactly correct. So, what's more important, the marketing or the price? That's right. Same, right,
Very good.
same,
Minus the fireworks at a gas station.
yeah, that's probably not
That's
as.
a little wild.
It's a
I
little
wouldn't go
scary.
on that one.
We're going crazy here, right? So let's say, for example, let's do another example. Let's say you go into you go into a, electronics store, and you're in the market for a computer, okay? And the computer that you want cost, $1,200, okay? And it's got a bunch of stuff on it, like it's got this like extra hard drive, and it's got some extra software, and it's got like a cool monitor and all that. But you don't really want all that stuff, you just want the basic thing. What are you gonna do? You're gonna look to see if there's another computer that matches exactly what you want, right? I went about this story the wrong way, but you're either going to, if you're not gonna buy that computer, let's say the one you want without all the stuff is $1,000, which one are you gonna buy? The one for $1,000, right? Now, what if that one for $1,000 had all the stuff the $1,200 one was? Which one are you gonna buy?
$1,000.
Right, so you either want the cheapest one you can find, right? Or the, not necessarily like, you don't want the $400 one because it's not as good of quality, but you either want the less expensive one for the same value, or you want more stuff for the same price. Same thing, right? So you're constantly evaluating, am I getting the most stuff for the amount of money that I'm paying? Does that make sense? And that also ties back to what we were talking about earlier, which is the more you can share with your prospect that you're doing, the more they think you're doing, right?
Well, they know more they know you're doing, right? Because you want them to see that you're actually doing it.
That's right. Right. So for example, let's say for example that Kathy has a listing and you list the home, 3 months later, nothing's happened. Okay, maybe you had some showings, but you didn't get any contracts. Okay, and you did steps 1 through 50, but you didn't tell her about it. And then the listing expires and I get the listing. And I do the exact same steps 1 through 50, right? But I tell her every time I do something. Who do you think, and I sell the home, who do you think she's gonna like more, me or Kathy?
You.
Of course. Because like, number one, I got the job done, and number two, I told her what I was up to, right? Because, I mean, I don't know if this has happened to you, but it's probably happened to me 5 or 6 times in my 15 years, where I literally have had buyers and or sellers leave the closing table, transaction's over, and before I got back home or back to the office, they called me and said, how much money of that do you get to keep? Meaning, I think you're overpaid. Right? So whose issue is that? That's my issue. That means I didn't communicate enough of what I was doing to them throughout the process for them to think I was worth the paycheck I got. This was particularly the case back in the short sale and foreclosure days, where oftentimes the realtor was walking away with more money than anyone. Right? They're like, whoa, you just got 10 grand? I'm like, yeah, I earned every nickel of it. They're like, prove it. Right? Make sense? So the takeaway here is, don't be bashful about telling the people what you're doing. Right? Because that substantiates the value. Cool? All right, quick side note, and we'll move on to the next group. We have a few exclusive things for productivity people: WhatsApp, Facebook, Google Drive, RampUp, YouTube. If you are not on these, please let me know. If you don't have a binder, let me know. And if you don't have a schedule of what's going on, let me know. Okay?
Which Facebook group are you talking about?
This is the Roswell PC group. This is an exclusive little group for us.
Okay, I said that, I guess I got a little for it.
Sorry?
I guess I got a little for it.
Good, that probably means you haven't been scrolling on Facebook, which I'm proud of you for. Because I think I invited you a few days ago.
On ramp-up, though, on the ramp-up one.
You did what?
I saw you on the ramp-up one yesterday.
What do you mean?
There was a post that you made, you liked something on the ramp-up.
Oh, okay, okay.
From saying that you started in